welcome to the first show here of the Arnette Report, where we're outlining best practices of advertising, marketing, and of course promotional products. And tonight's guest that we're interviewing is Dan Williams from the networking community. Dan is well known in the Washington, D.C. area and now throughout the United States via several other cities where he's expanded his networking community practices. Dan, welcome to the show.
It's great to be on the Arnette Report.
Thank you. We're going to go with a general format, ask you some questions and give you an opportunity perhaps to enlighten us as to what you are doing yourself in the way of marketing, advertising, and promotion of the networking community and all your other activities. And then, of course, what you've seen as best practices here and throughout the United States.
Fair enough.
So, Karin, what do you have for me?
Dan, welcome. How did you first come up with the idea for the networking community?
Well, Karin, the reason that it's working, and the reason that it's been successful is that I really didn't come up personally with myself with the idea for the networking community. It kind of came to me. And it's a little bit of the story of making lemonade out of lemons. And what happened was I was in a corporate world. I had that security in the high-tech world of being successful with the rise of telecommunications and the internet. And in the year 2000, I'm sure we can all look at our portfolios, it imploded. And I went down with it. And as a result of that implosion, I was really lost. But what I started to do was network. I started to go out there and try to figure out how I could reconnect with people, redefine myself. And I found the networking community in that dilemma, and I share in the book, from desperation, and that was the desperation part, to discovery. And the discovery was the discovery of the networking community, which really phoenixed out of that situation that at the time looked like bad news, but ultimately was my passion and my ability to help others connect.
Now, initially, you started doing some events in the Washington area, and then, of course, very quickly got right into speaking engagements. So in the initial stages, as you were becoming more of a household name in networking around the Washington area, how did you market and advertise Dan Williams as a speaker?
Well, there was a book that very much influenced the networking community in my thinking at the time. And as I've heard before, that there's two things that will affect you, and that is the people that you meet, and I like to say through networking, and the books that you read. And one of the books that I came across during those early days of the networking community was a book by Seth Godin, and the book was named Permission Marketing. And the concept was that if you built trust with people by providing them useful and relevant and personalized information, then they would give you permission to communicate with them. So I provided them information on where the networking events were happening, a resource center for who was networking and what networking groups fit each particular culture, and then provided some anecdotal information that I tagged as tales from the networking community, and started a column and got a following as a result of that column. And then from that column, we built trust by inviting those people to the networking events.
Neat. Now that gave you a unique perspective because you essentially were interviewing and learning about all these different networking groups.
Absolutely.
So let me put you on the spot here and ask you to give us a 30-second clip synopsis of your impression of some of the bigger networking groups here in the Washington area.
Fire away.
Right. The first one, let's say, is NRG, Network Referral Group. Energy.
Mike and Roxanne have done a tremendous job of taking that organization and providing personal energy into networking. And what they have accomplished, and they learned this back in their days of cold calling, and they said, we don't like cold calling. Nobody really likes cold calling. So what Mike and Roxanne did, and they did it brilliantly, and they're still doing it very, very much on a professional level and have created a tremendous groundswell, is let's eliminate the cold call. And so NRG is all about a real high energy referral base, so you don't have to make that cold call.
Okay. How about Team Network?
Team Network. When I think of Team Network and Kurt, I think of Marty's, a meeting and a party. And again, each one of these organizations, not one size fits all. Each one has their own culture. And guess what? The culture emanates from the founders of these organizations. So Kurt, as you may have seen Kurt in the band, he loves the ability to get together in a social fashion and to bond, and his concept was have a meeting and a party. So Team Network has addressed a very important niche for those networkers that really don't like to be at a networking event, but like to more socialize. And so his concept is, let's get together, maybe at somebody's house, or let's do a trip, let's go bowling, and let's do that, and at the same time integrate in the social aspects of networking with personal networking.
About Professional Networkers Alliance.
P&A. I would look at, and I would use the word diversity. P&A really reaches out and builds alliances and relationships with the community. And what they have done very effectively is they've been able to reach out and provide a resource center and a forum for all networkers to come together from all different groups. And they've done that successfully by building alliances.
All right. BNI.
BNI. That's
Business Network International.
That's right. Dr. Ivan Meisner. That's the granddaddy of all networking organizations. Started in the early 80s. And back to my telecommunications days, I often say that BNI is the AT&T of networking, as AT&T was. Now, what BNI has offered and what they provide, and they've got 90, well, don't hold me to the quotes on these numbers, but probably 93,000 members.
Wow.
Large numbers, 3,500 groups on an international basis. And what they have is a very structured organization. I look at it as almost a little bit like the Starbucks or McDonald's of networking, where it's very regimented, it's very structured, it's very methodical. So if you like to have that type of an organizational culture, BNI would be perfect for you.
Now, I'd be neglectful if I didn't tag that segue right into the networking community. Now, you saw in looking at these groups that there was still a void to be filled and a need, and so you started looking at the networking community and formed your own networking groups on that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I try to take the best of all of those groups that we just talked about. And what I saw at the networking community, and keep in mind the way that we came together was I had networkers come to me and ask me how they could join the networking community. At the early times in the networking community, we were a resource center. And so after about the nth time that somebody had asked me, I figured maybe there's an opportunity here, and the market's telling me that they want to have a membership model with the networking community. So what I did was I took a model that said, from a value of our culture, from our value standpoint, not one size fits all. So I tried to take Team Network, a little bit of BNI, a little bit of P&A, and said you need structure and accountability. You need leadership. You need policies, because if you don't, it's a little bit like herding kittens. So what you need is having some structure and accountability, but not have it so rigid that you really take the personality out of that group. So what we have with the networking community is a model where we have groups that meet in a structured way, but yet we allow each one of those groups to form their own personality. And some of them are more structured, some of them are less structured, and that really is the spirit and the culture of the networking community.
Dan, with all the different groups around, there's got to be different ways to network. What are some of the basic tools that you would suggest for someone that really hasn't been going to networking events?
Yeah, well, the key word, Karen, is basic, and it really is back to fundamentals. And networking is all about, obviously, the middle word of networking is work. So as if you're going to work, you have to have basic business tools that you show up for. And so you need to be prepared, you need to be professional. And it starts with the basics. Make sure you have a pen. Have a piece of paper to take a note, and don't take notes in front of people. But you're not going to remember all the people that you met or the important points. So have your basic pen and paper. I always recommend that you have a name badge. I mean, let's face it. When you go to these networking events, you're going to sit at a table. They're going to first enter a table, and they're going to give you one of these sticky labels. Yeah, you know what's going to happen to that label? It's going to get dog-eared in about 2 seconds, or 20 seconds, or 20 minutes if you're not lucky. So
it'll fall off.
That's right. And so have a professional gold-plated name badge. So have a name badge. Make sure that if you do have, in this modern age of 21st century economy and technology, that you have your PDA, or you have your BlackBerry, or now the iPhone. A plug for Steve Jobs, that he needs one. But have professional tools that when you are there and you're meeting people, life happens and you're going to forget a lot of this after you leave, so be prepared so that you can take notes and approach it like it's a professional job, because this is serious work. Although you're going to have some fun, but be prepared and show up on time and have the proper tools.
Okay.
Now, you've been a guest on some local radio.
I have.
As a matter of fact, Brian Roberts has made you almost a regular on his Taking Care of Business radio program. How did you end up meeting Brian, and how's that relationship going?
I know this is going to be a surprise to you two at the Arnette Report and our audience, but I met Brian Roberts through networking.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens out there when you just get your feet on the street. But Brian and I came across at one of my networking events, the Networking Power networking events that were sponsored here in the DC region, and he and I had common backgrounds back to the high-tech world, and so we immediately clicked and went back to some of the old days stories, and we knew a number of people that were in our industry. So on a personality level and just a interpersonal, getting to know Brian, we got along and got to know each other very well. And he's done just a tremendous job with taking care of business with WMAL, and asked me in terms of just some content, and he's looking for experts. He's looking for somebody that knows their product and their niche. And so when it came to networking, he asked me if I could represent networking on his show, and it was really a lot of fun, and it was just a great time just trying to be on his show and try to communicate with his audience. So it was a good niche, and it all started just by getting out on the streets and shaking some hands.
Now, are any of those conversations available as a podcast download from your website?
They are. What we've done, and it's the beauty of the technology available today, you can't beat TV stations and TV studios and TV shows like you and Karin have. And so this is very powerful because you've got the professional atmosphere and you've got the professional technicians around. That's what WMAL has, obviously, as well. So we took the best of both worlds and combined that technology and that expertise that Brian and you and Karin bring to the table, and we put that and made that available through podcasting, which is simply putting up a radio show or a TV program on the net and downloading it so that people could listen to it in their cars, on their PCs, but more importantly, at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon when they really had the time. So it's really the TiVo concept of being able to listen to and to watch shows when it's convenient for you. So it is now available through our website and through iTunes, through podcasting.
Now, speaking of your website, that's a key factor in today's marketplace, is having an effective website that has multiple things available on there. You've got podcasts, and what are some of the other features you have available on your website?
Well, we put our press releases out on the website. We put, obviously, as you said, the radio show segments and the podcast up there and make it available. We also are going to be including shortly video. So TV programs, with this advent of broadband and the fact that we're all now wired or close to being wired.
As podcasting?
Well, it'll be video podcasting, if you will. So we can now take video shows and take television programs like this one and make it available up on our website. So it's like anything else, and we'll talk about this in terms of just general marketing. There's not one, back to the Lone Ranger, Tales from the Networking Community, there's not one silver bullet. You need a combination, and that's with a website or any marketing arsenal. You really do need a number of, as we say, arrows in your quiver. So combination of text, a combination of audio, a combination of video, but more importantly, there's got to be 150 million websites plus out there. Don't expect them to come to you. The way you do it is you send out a link back to permission marketing, provide some information that's useful, and then allow those people that are you pushing information to come back to your not just web homepage, but to the page that you want them to attend.
I noticed that you've moved out to the Midwest and you started here, and I know networking here is a very big part of the business world. How is it in other parts of the country? Did they accept it or embrace it the same way, or is it different?
The beauty of networking is that it's already been branded for us in a way. So networking is really at the heart of the word. And as I often say, networking is in need of a public relations manager. Because when you say networking, Karin, you're really, in my mind, are just saying relationships, people. So certainly the ability to build relationships, whether it be here in the East or what we've done with my managing partner, Janine Dent, in the Midwest, and we'll be expanding further. Relationships are important, and everybody now knows the importance of those. Now, culture-wise, there is some difference. And I would say in the Midwest, what we experience is that people are slower to embrace you. And it may come from that Midwest, a little bit of a slower type of a pace, which is refreshing. It may come from, there's a lot of dramatic German type of cultures there, so they're more conservative, they're more thorough, they're more not accepting immediately as they would be in the Boston, New York, and DC corridors. So what we experience in the Midwest is that they're a little bit slower to embrace. However, I had to put a caveat on it. Once they do, and they did in spades, embrace the networking community, they are much loyal and less say, ADD as they are in the East Coast.
Now, one of the things that you referred to just a minute ago was about building relationships. And you've had some strategic alliances with other organizations. I know that WAVA Radio at one time had done a commercial for you, and some of the other organizations. And I just recently saw that BeltwayNetworking.com had picked up and now is endorsing your book.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Beltway Networking, because Chris Dewar, the founder of that organization, goes to the heart of what the networking community is all about, and that is Chris provides a resource center now through the DC region for different events and allows us as individuals and businesses to post those events. So we've aligned with Chris, I believe very much in Beltway Networking, in their spirit of making information available to all, and more importantly, in a non-objective way. They don't have any particular agenda other than networking, and they've done a marvelous job doing that.
You had a question about his book, didn't you?
I did. I happen to have this book with me that I have my own autographed copy. I've been fortunate enough to get one of the first ones hot off the press. What made you write this book?
I can tell you, Karen, I'm not a journalist by trade, and I didn't consider myself to be, per se, a writer. But what got me to write that book, and it started with the columns that I referred to with permission marketing, getting the word out and providing information about networking, was just the passion of what happened to me personally in my work life. And really what happened was that I was caught without a network. And I was caught at the ripe age of 50 in a situation where I was very vulnerable. So I had a deep passion to make sure that other people didn't get in that same situation, and so that's how I started, just one day coming out of a networking event feeling so strongly about it that I just felt compelled to get it down in writing and to communicate that. That became the monthly columns, and those monthly columns over the 4 years is what morphed into the writing of the book. And I met the publisher for my book through
networking. Absolutely.
So
and it's a very enjoyable book to read. It's very easy to read. It's got some endearing stories. It basically brings networking down to a level where everybody can understand it. And I want to know how you're promoting it. How are you getting the word out there to everybody?
Just like anything else, I mean, there's not one magic, or silver bullet, if you will. I've learned, one, you have to have an arsenal of a number of media in order to do that. Certainly this type of a show and appearing on radio shows and doing speaking engagements is part of that. It's available on Amazon.com, and that's the granddaddy of all internet, bookstores, if you will. So Amazon.com has provided us a tremendous amount of exposure, and people that throughout the world, whether they be in Australia, and I've got somebody right now that sent me an email last night from Australia saying that her dad has now gotten the book and he's enjoying it,
Awesome.
or from Vienna, Virginia. People are able to buy it from Amazon.com. But I also noticed as I watched the David Letterman show and I watched the Jay Leno show that when you find guests on those shows, people that are celebrities, if you will, they often have a movie or a book that they're promoting. So I have found that although the book is out there and word of mouth is starting to provide the basic groundswell, it's really up to me to get out there and to start talking about it and promote it and to create that awareness that is so important. So I think a combination of all, but the most important part would be just my passion and my belief in it and being able to let people know about it, and hopefully they pick up on the excitement. But ultimately, as I say, no matter how excited I might be about the book, and I appreciate the compliments that you provided, and I've gotten a lot of those like that. They like the short read. They like the fact that it's anecdotal. They like the fact that it's told in a way that talks about relationships and in a way that I've provided some humor to it. I've got some chapters in there, marketing, schmarketing, all about how the marketing has changed.
And that's something I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
Between the writing the book and being in different parts of the country and talking about advertising and marketing and promotions, you've seen a lot of different type of media and work. You've already mentioned the television and radio. I'm sure you've done some print other than the book. You've done some newspapers and magazine articles and things like that. What's kind of worked the best for you personally?
All of the above. And I know it's not the answer that you might have been looking for, but if you take a look at the media print, if you take a look at the internet, if you take a look at podcasting, if you look at the ability to be on Amazon.com, personal appearances, then you couple that with mailings and direct mail and traditional advertising promotions is still very much in vogue.
So more of a collateral marketing approach has
Yeah.
been highly effective.
A comprehensive campaign put together, and here's the key word. Here it comes. Frequency or consistency. It's got to be very deliberate, and it's got to be very consistent, and it's got to be on a frequent basis, because we're receiving, Jeff and Karin, 3,000 messages a day, minimum. So what happens is people are tuning us out. It takes 45 times just for you to get one impression.
Now you're saying that the average person is exposed to that many logos and messages per day.
Per day, minimum. So all of a sudden, what's happening with this world of this information age, it's become not a kiss, but almost a curse. It's turned us into kind of numbing out and turning off a lot of these messages. So you've got to be very focused, you've got to be very consistent, and you've got to assume that people aren't going to read, hear, or see it the first 9 times that comes across their screen.
Well, that may be one of the one of the reasons that radio is so high in my book, because my years of experience with WAVA has taught me that in order to get through to people, you need to talk to that same audience over and over and over again. And the problem that we've run into in many cases is with print is that 70% of the people out there can't get past the headline.
Right.
So when you think about your marketing and you develop some of the catchphrases and the headlines, has there been any particular methodology to promoting, like the TNC networking groups themselves? What do you see them doing to advertise and promote their groups?
Well, a lot of it is you want to try to dovetail, if you will, on some brands that have already existed. So you've heard me talk about Amazon.com. So I don't have to promote Amazon.com. They've done their own promotional and marketing efforts. Apple iTunes. So I think what you want to do is you want to take your message, but you want to couple it with another marketing engine that people already have got awareness of and already have, familiarization with. And so I'm a big believer of taking the David and Goliath approach to it. And us as small business users or as small business owners should be able to take and leverage, for instance, this show itself is, in the Comcast studios. Now, Comcast has got a very popular and very branded name. So when I talk about the Tales from the Networking Community, as I go on speaking circuits, I will be talking about the book as we were interviewed by on the Arnette Report on Comcast television. All of a sudden, people will recognize.
Or taking care of business.
Or taking care of business. Or any of the ones that people have already got recognition of. Keep in mind that with all of these messages, you've got to be able to break through the clutter. And all of a sudden, you've got to be able to break through the noise level. And you have to, as I say, triangulate it. So you have to use the authority of some of these bigger brands.
Yeah.
You have to use the internet, and you have to use traditional, advertising and marketing promotions in order to come at it in different angles. And when you put all that together, all of a sudden, you start to jump out as somebody that says, I'm not going away. One of the chapters in the book is, Can You Hear Me Now? And it was one of my, this particular gentleman that was doing the Verizon commercials was driving me crazy. And that's what I wrote about. And this was the passion I wrote about in the book.
We all remember that.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And it became so branded, it became so consistent that it just got inculcated inside my thinking. And so what you've got to do is, can you hear me now? You've got to, just like Verizon, start to penetrate the audience, but in different ways.
Well, it's funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
Because I know that Karin told me she had a question she wanted to ask.
Oh, yeah. You know I have to ask this, right?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. What is the most effective promotional product that you've seen that maybe has created some type of a response?
I can tell you one that comes to mind, and it had to stand out and set itself aside, because right now, going back to all the marketing messages, you've got to set yourself out and differentiate yourself from your traditional marketing. And this is not thinking outside the box. This is thinking outside the building,
Right.
And one of the promotional products that I came across was, there was a bottle, and you can only imagine the executive as the sitting at his desk. and there was a bottle that came. You know, these you might see it in the ocean where you've got the note inside of it and sand, and it came to his desk, and it was a note inside that bottle. He had to open up the bottle, it had sand, it had like chairs, beach scene, and then here was a note from a company that wanted to get that person's awareness. Now, I said 45 times. I think in that marketing promotion, you know, they only had to do it one time in order to break through
They
the
just
clutter.
put the whole bottle in the mail as a plastic
Yeah.
bottle or whatever. That's awesome.
Well, as we wrap up this show, Dan, what's next on the agenda for Dan Williams and the networking community?
Well, we're going to continue to expand the group model. We really believe that we've got a niche with the networking groups and that people are coming back to this way of word of mouth and wanting to meet each other. Another famous chapter I've got in terms of butcher in the book is called Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker. So we're going to go back to the days of old and put together these community groups. In addition to that, we're also going to be talking about this whole new world of networking in the 21st century, and through the book, through speaking engagements, through TV programs similar to yourself, through radio, and through speeches. I'm going to be on the pulpit that you've got to get out there and build your own independence through networking.
You know, the whole purpose of this show is to show small business owners or managers of different locations of businesses the ability to, they can think outside the box, come up with, well, what's going on and working well throughout the United States, and more especially in this local area. And so that's why we invited you on, because you've done such a good job on this. How can people get in touch with you? Is it basically most easily through the website, which is, of course, www.thenetworkingcommunity.com?
Well, again, not one size fits all. So certainly the website, thenetworkingcommunity.com, dwilliams@thenetworkingcommunity.com, or let's go back to the phone, you know, back to days of old, 571-246-7366.
Well, we'll have those on the credits also. Dan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming by and allowing us to talk with you. Karin?
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
We'll see you out in the networking community.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks to you for tuning in to us tonight.